Good. Thank you for doing that, Rick. I always forget. Okay, so welcome everyone to the District 5360 Club Learning Zoom meeting. My name is Lawrence Nyman, your host tonight. Thanks for taking the time to participate in this meeting. Feel free to pour that glass of wine. Some people have already done that, beer or whatever beverage you prefer. Since this is a Zoom meeting, your video and audio is activated. Make sure you mute yourself. We don't want to hear the grocery list your partner is providing you. Unmute yourself during the discussion sessions. If you have comments, you can post them in the chat section. Tonight's presentation is being recorded and will be shared along with a slide deck in the coming days. For anyone that would like closed caption, I'm going to activate that right now. For anyone that would like closed caption, make sure you press the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen to enable that. The agenda for tonight, we'll start with a presentation and then a breakout session, discussions, a large group discussion, and then a wrap up of tonight's meeting. Tonight's presenter is Doug Logan. Doug is a retired management consultant and facilitator. He's a Paul Harris Fellow, Rotary Benefactor, and Rotary Bequest Society member. As coordinator, Doug's focus is on innovation and strengthening the organization for the future. To this end, Doug and his team of assistant coordinators and innovative club advocates are implementing an action plan focused on growing club membership and starting new clubs. Welcome, Doug.
Thanks very much. Good evening, everybody. Well, early evening for you, Calgarian. Later evening for me. Glad to be back with you and having a conversation with you about Rotary and growing Rotary. What I'm going to do is I'll talk for 15 or 20 minutes or so and lead you into some things to consider in your breakouts. And for the folks in Kindersley, I wish I could be a fly on the wall and listen to the conversation, because you're going to be able to have a real interesting conversation about yourselves and your club and what you see. For those of you who might be interested, soon on the Zone website, we'll be sending out a note that the full presentation, including videos that we have been doing with this information, is going to be available on that you could access the link through the Zone website, and we'll be sending that information out. So that will be available in addition to these slides for you to use. So let me just quickly share my screen here. And away we go. I assume everybody can see it.
We can see it.
Okay. So what I thought I would do, just to start off, to be really honest, I was kind of ambivalent about this theme when I first heard about it. And it was only when I got thinking about it that I began to like it more and more. Because really, if we want to grow Rotary and continue to have an organization that has a significant impact in our communities and around the world, we have to be putting our imaginations to use and to be thinking about ourselves and the way we interact with each other in different ways. And so really, what I'm going to share with you, what we have learned from the clubs that were successful, I will be willing to bet none of you is going to be shocked or surprised by the 5 attributes. And as I have thought about it, and other research that I've done with Rotary clubs prior to this particular set of research that we did, all of these things ring really true, but they also tend to ring true to really effective organizations, and especially community-based organizations generally. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that, and we'll see how it goes. So for those of you who haven't heard this, what happened is that my partner coordinator, Herb Klotz from Zone 32, and I were talking about the membership data that came from RI at the beginning of the Rotary year. And we each independently of each other started to look at it, and we're curious to see clubs that had grown in spite of the pandemic and in spite of all the difficulties that people were experiencing. And we were pleased by how many of those clubs there were. And in the course of the conversation and with our enhanced learning team and analytics teams, we decided it might be really interesting to have a look at whether or not those clubs had anything in common. So we invited clubs from both zones that had shown a membership growth of at least 5 members during the pandemic. There are quite a number more than that had grown, but we decided that 5 was a more significant number. And we sent the survey out. We were really pleased by the level of response that we got. The 11 questions, and as you can see, 55 of the 90 responded, so that's a 61% response rate. And then what happened is the team got together and had a look at the responses. And what was quite fascinating to us was we looked at the responses independently of each other and identified as individual team members what we thought the responses were telling us, and then got together as a team to see what happened. And within an hour, we had quickly come together to with consensus, a strong consensus on the attributes that I'm going to share with you. And while the attributes aren't that surprising, and they mirror many of the things that you would say or people have told you to say about Rotary and your club, we can tell you that these are things that are true based on data. So we have a high level of confidence that they're true. And as a bit of an aside, one of our next steps is going to be to have another look at clubs that are successful over the long term, whether or not there's been a pandemic. So what did we learn? We learned that their clubs shared 5 key attributes. The key one of all 5 by far is this one: strong leadership. Leadership is the critical ingredient necessary to bring all of the other attributes together. It is the one thing most responsible for a successful club. I'll talk a little bit more about these in detail. The next one is they had clear membership goals and a growth plan. They were active in their local communities, and they were seen to be active in their local community. So a lot of visibility. And then finally, the 5th one, they were active and intentional in engaging their members. And then one of the team members came up with this little graphic as a way of illustrating what it looked like, with the 4 legs holding up leadership. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. Leadership. One of the pieces of feedback that we've been getting is, as we have talked about this, is people have wanted to know a little bit more and hear a little bit more about this area. So what we have to really respect and understand is your impact as a leader can be positive or it can be negative. Let me give you an example. When I was a club president, the person who followed me and I worked closely together, and we were beginning to things happen and progress being made in the club. So Frank came in and he followed me, and great things continued. And then the person that followed Frank changed everything, and we began to lose members rapidly. So you can have a real positive impact or a negative impact. And it's really important when we're thinking about leaders and selecting our leaders that we keep that in mind, and that we do everything possible to get away from any warm body. I can't tell you how many times I've heard and seen examples of clubs putting somebody in place simply because they don't have anybody else. Recognizing there's all kinds of reasons for that. The other key to keep in mind is the success. And this is really backed up by the extensive membership data that we have. So strong clubs tend to continue to be strong clubs. Growing clubs tend to continue to grow. Failing clubs tend to continue to decline. And all of this is true roughly 80% of the time, and unless something significant happens to change things. So you could be doing really well, but it can be changed by all kinds of difficult circumstances. Or you could be doing poorly and it can also be turned around. So think about it in long terms, not just 1 year, but several years. Strong clubs have consistency, continuity, collaboration, and communication. They have teams of leaders within the club working together, prepared to work as a team, to continue things on, to get away from, and I'm really pleased because increasingly at the most senior level in Rotary, Rotary leaders are talking about this, getting away from my year and turning it into our year. So it's about our club, it's about how we can grow as a group. So it's about we, it's not about me as an individual leader. So the next element was having the goals and the plan for membership growth. It's really interesting what we learned from this one. 88% of the leaders we surveyed said that membership growth was a priority. And look at this one, 83% uploaded their membership goals in Rotary Club Central. Entering your goals in Rotary Club Central isn't going to make you successful, but it really begins the process of providing a focus and encouraging you to begin to drive yourself towards that goal. And as the slide earlier showed, you know, if you don't have a goal, anything that you accomplish will be true. 85% of them had a membership committee. This is important. It wasn't just one person. And this key, it was a club priority, so that active club members took responsibility for bringing other people in. And I remember Catherine Hahn from Rotary Club in Ontario talking about this and talking about how she was encouraging the members of her club, find a person and invite them to a meeting. And everybody got engaged and involved in doing that. The next element is the extent to which these clubs were active in their local community, having many events and projects. I remember one president in particular in Zone 32 talking about that he figured in his year they had 20 different events. Many of the events were a specific response to COVID, but they also took advantage of the challenge of COVID to do things that they might not otherwise have done. So for example, because they couldn't meet indoors, they held meetings outdoors and did community projects such as a cleanup, which they might not have accomplished or taken on otherwise. So they were in the community, highly visible events. They made a point of having opportunities for people to have fun, to meet together, often monthly, often ongoing. And look at that number, 3/4 of them, almost 3/4 of them had events that were targeted at membership attraction. Paired with that was visibility in the community. So it's not just that they were doing things, but they made a point of making sure that people in the community knew what they were doing. Some of the clubs used very traditional media to do that. Some of the smaller communities, the local newspaper still has a presence that it doesn't in the larger communities, and they used that. Some clubs use signage and billboards and so on to get people's attention. But the key difference for most of these clubs was the use of social media. And while some clubs had a key lead person on that, As often as not, most club members were posting on Facebook and other media that they use to let people know. And what happened with that is their friends, their neighbors, and other community members became interested and wanted to have an opportunity to join them and participate in the activities and the events. And then the last one, this is really important: active and intentional membership engagement, deliberate, purposeful, making a point of connecting with people. One club president talked about how at least once a month she got in touch with her new members. And she talked about how what that ended up doing is they ended up creating a whole little, their own little social group within the club where they began to connect and get together. People paid attention to their meetings and the kind of meetings that they had. As another leader said, nobody wants to come to an adult party. And so he talked about how he made a point of having interesting topics, variety of interesting topics, and a variety of things going on for people. They talked about being friendly, having fun, being inclusive, and paying attention to how they met as a group of people to ensure that new members in particular were welcoming. A lot of people talked about, a bit of a surprise to me, although I was pleased by it, with mentoring, onboarding, and making a point of tapping into what the interests of the new members and the newer members were, engaging all of the members, especially the new ones, in committees and in projects, so they felt quickly that they were part of something. And then finally, the deliberate attempt to recognize the varied and different contributions that committee members, club members rather, were making at any given point in time. So there you have the 5 attributes, and I'm sure none of these is particularly surprising to you. What it requires from us is not to say, yes, I know that, but to begin the process of looking at how we compare ourselves to that, how we're doing as clubs, as leaders of clubs, and so on, and how we can begin to ensure that many of these attributes apply to our clubs as well. And I should make a point, not all of the clubs demonstrated strength in all of these attributes, but most clubs demonstrated most of them, which is a significant contributor to their success. So now what I'm going to do is invite you to go into breakouts. Kindersley folks, you're automatically one of the breakouts. And I'd like you to take 20 minutes or so and look at these questions. The first one is just talk honestly about your own club and how you think you're doing in relation to the 5 attributes. And then identify opportunities you think that you can seize on to help your club grow its membership. If you don't know each other, take a minute and introduce yourselves and the club that you're from. And if you could volunteer somebody to assume responsibility for feeding back to the rest of us when we call you back together, please do so. So once again, the 2 questions: how are you doing in relation to the 5 attributes? And then what kind of opportunities can you identify to help your club grow its membership? So there you go.
So Doug, if I broke them into 4 rooms, you're going to have 5 to 6 to a room. 5 rooms, you're going to have 4 to 5. What would you like?
4 is good. 4 should be fine.
4 rooms?
Yeah, plus Kinderly, all by themselves.
I'm not sure how I can do that now.
Oh, okay. You can't.
At this stage, no, because it's automatically assigned and they're considered one room, one participant.
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that emerges. They may end up just having a side conversation in the room.
Okay.
That's
so
right.
Can I do that now into 4 rooms?
Yes, please do. So we'll see you back in 20 minutes. All right. Okay, now he's not mountains anymore, but he's got a face.
So when you logged in twice, but in real time, I get to see if you share the screen, are the participants seeing it? Is your volume working? It's a quality control thing, and it works great.
I've had a number of people telling me you need to get another screen.
Yeah.
You need to get another screen.
Yeah.
So I would say everybody's back. Steve, if you wanted to.
Yes, thank you, Doug. We talked before the meeting. I'd like to lead our discussion with our group leaders. And as the incoming district governor, at the end here, we'd like to kind of set some action plans from our discussion. And it will help us as we move forward within the district and try to get some action plans going for this coming year. So I don't know if we go by numbers. We know which group is number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which group is number 1?
We were, Steve.
Okay, Rick, I guess you're up then, eh?
Thanks. Well, we had, there were 6 of us in our group, and we had representation. Excuse me. That was my 20-minute timer. We had representation from Calgary at Stampede Park, Don Bacon and Alan Johnson. From Calgary East, we had Jim, and from Red Deer East, we had Harvey, and I was representing Calgary Fish Creek, but didn't quite get my message across because we ran out of time. But I think a couple of things came through. Again, I think there was agreement that leadership is key, and leadership should be not just one person, but through from top to bottom type thing. It's a way of engaging more members, which is one of the other attributes, by having them involved in committee work or projects or on the board and that sort of thing. As a result of COVID, there was a lot of discussion regarding having excellent meetings, great speakers, and of course Zoom allowed us to perhaps get more speakers in, but basically everybody really wants to get back together, and we think there's a better opportunity by moving back to face-to-face meetings and still focusing on having high quality speakers, events that are, fun and fellowship came up in a couple of the conversations, and that would help with if people have fun, they see value in coming, they're more than likely to become engaged. We talked a little bit about club goals, but not, and public image. I think the thing was that there's not a real like for social media, but I think at the same time we realize that it's probably one of several tools in our toolbox to kind of demonstrate to our communities that we are out there and what we're doing and what value we bring to our communities. So I think 2 of the clubs said that although they don't have a liking for social media, they better try to find a member that can really help them with social media messaging. I think that's the highlights. I don't know if I've missed anything, Steve. Or...
No, that sounds good, Rick. Thank you very much.
Can I just respond to a couple of points?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the points that I'd really encourage you to think about is the whole issue of meetings, and to keep in mind that the meeting should be about getting people together, and it should not be about the meeting. The meeting is an opportunity, should be an opportunity for people to connect, and there are all kinds of Rotarians who don't go to very many meetings, but who are incredible Rotarians. And one of the things that we learned from the pandemic is there are a whole bunch of different ways that we can connect and do things. And so I think that I would be concerned that we all, in our anxiety to get back and be able to get together with people, fall back into a way of doing things that is increasingly not attractive to other people. And the other point around social media is we have to be reaching out in a way that our potential customers want to be talked to.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Group number 2, who is our spokesman there?
I think we were room number 2, so I'll go ahead, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
So we had 2 Chinookers, myself and Paul Gadet. We had Red Deer East, Donna. We had Stephen Gasser from Calgary North, and we had the Mr. Honorable Martin Parnell from Cochrane. So really good discussion. We kind of only talked about question number 1, but for Calgary Chinook, active in the community, but definitely not as much over the past couple of years because of some of our regular community service activities being canceled at their request because of COVID, and we never really filled the gap, although we are trying to build a new larger event, which we're collaborating with 2 other clubs with Ribfest, which hopefully is a big annual event in Calgary. So which will be really active in the community, displaying that. We did change our strategic plan to vary our meeting types and times to attract different types of members and not as many meetings. So instead of having 4 weekly lunch meetings, we only have 2 weekly lunch meetings, a week off, which maybe you can fit a fellowship or community service event in there when there is one. And then we actually have a Thursday evening pub meeting, which is, again, just a different style of meeting, a bit more casual, a bit more relaxed, different day, different time, just to attract those people that may not be able to get away for an hour and a half plus travel for a lunch. Have membership goals and people that think about membership, but for some reason it just doesn't filter through the rest of the club. There's always a couple of people on the committee, but we talk to the club about it, but for whatever reason it just doesn't filter down the chain. Leadership is strong, and we do set goals, but and we do have good leaders coming forward as well. For Calgary North, they are in the midst of recovering from a bad leader. He said even about 7 years ago. So he says it's taking time, but they're slowly getting out of what happened in the past from a bad leader. They have a really strong international presence, but admittedly they are weaker locally. So they're really trying to attract younger members and that want to have a big presence locally in the community. A lot of their past new members had an international interest, and now they're trying to find members that want to do more locally. So they admitted that they need to do more locally. Red Deer East had great momentum, but again, COVID has slowed it down. Smaller club, really active members when they get out there. They even have a big banner when they go out and do an event that they display. They have 3 new members recently, which is amazing for a smaller club. So it's a really large percentage. Even things like helping Syrian families, Mustard Seed, Salvation Army. So it sounds like they're really active in their community. And for Cochrane, one point that he made, which I thought was amazing, was that they actually have a member who is really focused on public image and communication. And being in a smaller community, they're doing a lot of work with the press to promote what that club is doing within the community. So I think something that we as Calgarians think that we can't do because we have a larger community, but I think we need to do a better job of it even in our local communities. And that's one thing that Steve said about Calgary North as well. They have the whole north quadrant, yet they don't do enough to let that quadrant know that they're there.
Thanks, thanks, Rob. I like the idea, of utilizing that local media. And I know there's a lot of clubs in our district that are in smaller towns and communities. And I've seen that in our own community in Raymond. We do have a sign up all year round, and we always indicate what's coming up. And I know that really helps us. So that was great on the local media. And everyone's talking about leadership and goals. But let's go to group number 3, unless Doug, did you have anything else?
Well, just a quick comment that, the one thing that we at the zone want to start doing a little bit more work on is the different dynamics and sets of challenges for smaller clubs. It's not, if you've got 100 members, what you've got available to you is not the same as if you got 10 or 15. And we have a lot of clubs that are small, 20 members or less, that we need to be able to provide different tools.
Yeah, that's certainly part of our district too. We got quite a few small clubs. Okay, group number 3. Any volunteers there?
Well, we had too many past district governors and incoming district governors. But the best message was a 1-year-old member of Vi Sanford. So Vi is going to speak for our group. Tell her what's going right.
I was in a group with a number of other members who are from very small clubs. And so, you know, the challenges that they're experiencing is kind of opposite to what I experienced. I only joined Rotary just over a year ago here in Canmore, Alberta. And the other members were from Red Deer and from several quadrants of Calgary, I believe. So what they've experienced is quite different than what I've experienced, because many of them are long-term members. So in my experience, we had a really interesting year because we had to redo everything due to COVID. But one thing that our club managed to do was a lot of fun events. And we didn't have meetings in person, obviously, but we'd had virtual meetings, which were very well attended. And we had very good speakers at our virtual meetings. So we were able to bring in a lot of people from outside the valley that could speak to our groups. And we were able to do a lot of outdoor activities. And we really did work on the fun and fellowship aspect of the club. And that came up with some of the other clubs as well, is that fun and fellowship is one of the reasons that people join Rotary. So I think we did that very well with the constraints of COVID, even here in Canmore. And the one thing I experienced in my club is, even though I was new, I felt included. And I participated in a lot of events that were put on by the club, but that required a lot of volunteers. So we have 2 major events during the year. One is the Festival of Trees in December, and one is a golf tournament in June. And then a few smaller events, Halloween parties, litter cleanups. But all of those opportunities were available to every member of the club, and we wanted everybody to be included. So I felt that that was a nice way to have me join a club that I felt included in. And our incoming president this year is a female, and she, Donna Potter, she has brought a lot of Indigenous awareness to our club. And I really appreciated that aspect of what Rotary was doing along those lines. So that aligned with my own interests. And so I was happy to see that kind of direction. And we're also a very environmental club. So we do a lot of environmental initiatives, and that also aligns with my own personal interests. So, you know, a club that has something for the new members that they're interested in is a really good way to bring in new members. And I think our club does that very well.
Okay, great. Well, it's great to have your perspective as a new member of your club, and sounds like Cochrane is doing some great things out there. So thanks so much for your time.
Canmore.
Or Canmore. Yes, Canmore. Sorry.
We get it confused with Camrose all the time, but
Yes.
but
Okay.
it is Canmore.
Anything to add, Doug, or anyone else?
Well, just the example of my own club, and what I'm about to tell you, I had zero responsibility for. This was all other people. In fact, I wasn't even a member of the club at that time. I was with another club. But the club currently has high 60s, I think it's just about 70 members. And several years ago, it had 25 and was dying. And so they underwent some soul searching and looking at who they were and what they were doing, why and how. And they underwent a profound transformation. And one of the key elements of that transformation was asking potential members what they wanted to do. It's a different conversation from here. We've got this big event we need help for, to have talking to somebody. How can we help you meet your needs? What can we do to help you? And so it's just engaging people with different kinds of conversations.
Okay, great. Let's go to group 4.
That's going to be that. I was in that group and I talked way too much, so let somebody else.
Which group was Kindersley in? I'm curious.
Kindersley was in 4 and they didn't participate with us. They participated by themselves. So Sharon, do you want to share what you talked about?
Sure. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the themes that we had were ones that were somebody's already mentioned before. But the one thing that somebody said here that rung true was it's like we're starting over. It's almost after 2 years of COVID's weirdness. It's like we're starting over fresh. It's almost like having an original planning meeting. The person who said this was actually one of our charter members, so she would know. And so that was kind of an interesting take on it. Visibility seemed to be a theme that kept coming up again. You know, we do all sorts of things, but nobody knows we're doing it. One thing we did last summer that seemed to be a good one that was fairly low effort. We were parade marshals for the local, you know, the Goose Festival parade. And so we all wore Rotary shirts and like lots of people said, oh, we still have a Rotary club kind of thing. So that was a good, you know, it wasn't a lot of planning event. Somebody else suggested that something that could be done is sort of get Rotary's name out there by celebrating other people's good deeds, sort of a Rotary salutes, you know, when there's like a local lady that's goes cleaning up face masks, abandoned face masks while she's walking her dog, things like that. Just, you know, some sort of salute to people who are doing good things within the community, you know, Rotary salutes might be something that would work. We asked one of our newer members how they were finding it. They said within the club level, not bad, but that anytime she'd been trying to get information on the bigger picture, like from district or like from the Ukraine thing, the information never came. So maybe just, I'm not sure how that works, but just a comment on that. But other than that, a lot of the things were things that other people had already mentioned. So.
Okay. And then who was the spokesman from the other group of number 4? Doug, you said you'd talk.
We got to apply someone to do it. So I can do it, or Henry, you can do it if you want. Henry's not replying.
I'm passing because I'd like to hear from somebody who's got some talent.
Okay, I was in 4 and Rotary Club of Canmore, and I know people aren't going to be not thrilled by this. We don't have a membership problem. We have a retention problem. We have about 100 members, and people come to us. There was people that joined Rotary and they didn't actually have an in-person meeting for 6 to 10 months, but they joined. We had a very robust Zoom meeting. They went to hybrid, then Zoom. But one of the things we did, especially since the June 2013 flood, is we've made ourselves very high profile in the community. During the flood, the 12 months, we did probably 12 different press releases, radio, media. We would write them. Sometimes the media would copy and paste them without even changing anything. We created in 2011, a PR committee. So all the avenues of service had the branding that was consistent with the whole club. We do stuff in the community every 6 weeks or so. Lack of a better word, a soup kitchen. We provide 20+ volunteers for that. We go out and do work bees to clean the community up. Science fair, we provide probably 30+ members, plus we sponsor it. One of the things Rotary did like 15 years ago, they said, we do great things in Rotary, but we don't tell the community. Well, we've made it a real chore and to do it. We have a very good website that's the data is kept up to date. It's not 2 years old. We have engaged social media, Facebook, Instagram, and people come to the community and they sit there and say, hey, I want to get back to the community. And people say, oh yeah, you want to go to Rotary. The example I gave when I was in business, if you're selling hamburgers, you want to be in the top 3 listed, McDonald's, Burger King, and the same thing with service clubs to give back to the community. If you're not in the top 3, you don't have a fighting chance. Plus members up and you know, ask friends and things like that. It's all that stuff, but really what's really benefit. Plus we have fun meetings. We have they're not just all, some of the meetings I've went to in Alberta, they're pretty dry. We have the joke of the day. It's entertaining. It's fun. We laugh, but then also we have serious moments. Speakers, we brought in the commissioner of the CFL to speak. We had Sheldon Kennedy. We have a variety of people like Vice comment, a variety of different interests, whether it's First Nations or environmental. We had Elizabeth May as a guest speaker in Zoom. Again, you need to engage them so they see fair value for the time and money they're engaging, and to say, we don't have a membership problem, we have a retention problem. We need to engage those people or we lose them.
Okay, thanks very much. So that's a good problem to have in a sense, but that's the other side of the equation there.
Yeah.
So can I just, before you move on, one of the things that we have to really learn how to do is to really respect and understand that every club is different from every other club. We share a lot in common. We have a lot of things that we can learn from each other, but ultimately what is happening with us is different. And Rotary far too often has been an organization of telling people what they need to do, and not an organization saying, okay, tell me about yourselves and what your challenges are. So, you know, we may have one club that doesn't have a problem bringing people in, but we have other clubs that do. And in fact, across our zone, in fact, zones 28 and 32, and in most of North America, we don't ask enough people to join. Our attrition is greater than our attraction, but that's not true with every club. And so we have to learn how to respond to each club in unique and distinct ways.
Okay, thanks, Doug. So before I kind of summarize and put forth a few action plans, is there any other discussion that anyone would like to bring forward at this time? Oh yes, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity of visiting a lot of clubs over the last month and a half with coming back in person. And I'm not sure you mentioned it, but a lot of clubs are into a renewal or rebirth, okay? And they're looking to do things different. Some of them are by choice, some are forced because of their locations where they were meeting are not there, and so on and so forth. And so they're looking for something. And one thing that kind of crosses my mind, we keep talking about meetings. Well, the objective of Rotary is not to go to a meeting, okay? The objective is to do something. And I'm wondering if we need to change the language a little bit in terms of if we're going to meet, if it's weekly or whatever, whether we need to put an action word into the meeting or the form or the forum, whether we say it's a fellowship meeting or it's an engagement meeting, because I think we need to change that thinking as to why we're going there. And I also think we're somewhat trapped in the meeting structure. I think that just drags us down, and we sort of recycle the same step-by-step thing we have every week. So that's just a couple of things I've been thinking about as I've traveled around the district.
Okay, thanks so much, Martin. And you've traveled around a lot. I've been following you and you're everywhere. That's great. Anyone else would like to comment before we kind of conclude here? All right, well, thanks everybody, and especially Doug for setting the parameters here for the 5 attributes. Those are great. And I'm excited because I think it is a new beginning. Like Swift Current has indicated, we've been through COVID for 2 years. Some are meeting in person, some are meeting still online, some are hybrids. Personally, in our little club in Raymond, we've been meeting in person for about 2 months, and it's just really engaged us. We're a club of 10, and Martin just inducted 2 new members. We got another member is going to come in soon. So we're growing by 30% in 1 month. So if we can do that for the rest of the year, we'll be doing great. But what's bringing these people in is we are doing some great initiatives on our local blood reserve. We got some projects. one individual says, I see what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. Another young man helped building, he's only in his 20s. He helped build some little mini houses. And so he wants to be a part of this. So I agree with Martin. We got to get out of this meeting scenario and do things. Now, those that attended our club leadership training a month or so ago, we had an in-person, we had 2 virtual, but I did introduce, along with what Doug has told us, Jennifer Jones, Imagine Rotary. And I've thought a lot about that. When we imagine things, it's sort of like there's no limit to what we can imagine, but it has to be also workable as we set our goals. And also another thing that I kind of illustrated was, this is the springtime of year, we're going to be planting little seeds, those that do gardening. So think of when you're planting those seeds, we're really planting seeds that are going to grow into production by the fall, whether it's a tomato plant, a squash, or whatever it might be. So as you go back to your clubs, think of what you're going to plant in your club. Which of these 5 attributes, and maybe it's something different, but choose 2 or 3 that you're going to plant in your club to get that vibrancy going in membership. And I really feel that the highlights that we've really heard tonight is leadership. And if you're not a leader in your individual club, you can be a support to that leader. Then we talked about being involved in the community and making that very visible through whatever it is, social media or whatever it might be. And, you know, I think we just need to ask. That's what I found over the last year or so is I've asked people to join. I've had a number of people to join either our club or other clubs. So let's get out there and ask. It's sort of like, are you a good salesman or not? Are you just going to kind of sit back? So let's ask others to join our club and let's get that vibrancy going. Anyway, you've all heard the 5 attributes. You've heard the discussion. Take this back, and as I continue to do more leadership training, visit your clubs, we'll be talking more about this, but it really comes from each one of you of what you really want to do in your clubs. Anyway, that's what I've got for tonight, and really appreciate everybody being here.
Doug, did you have any closing comments?
No, just thanks everybody for attending, and especially all those folks in Kindersley. I'm glad you did that. Cool.
Okay. I have a few closing comments. A reminder, the next Rotary 5360 webinar is May 18th. The topic is supporting the environment. Please register for the webinar. Thank you, Doug, for your presentation. Thank you, everyone else, for attending tonight. As a Rotarian, remember to make a difference in someone's life this week. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.